Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Martha Brechlin, and I'm a volunteer at the library. Today is August 31st, 2021. This interview is being conducted at the Fairhope Public Library. And the purpose of our interview is to get the oral history for the Fairhope Library's Veterans Oral History Collection. I would just like for you to talk about your service, and we can, you can go in chronological order of when you started or when you joined. Just to start, if you give me your name and the branch of the service.
Sure. My name is Tonya Beach Chambers. I was in the United States Army from 1983, and I was on active duty until 1986, so 3 years. And then I did an additional approximately 6 in the active reserve. I was with the reserves and the National Guard at various times, but it was a solid 6 additional years. I was a specialist. I was an E4. I never made it past that. At the time I was in, it wasn't so popular for females to be in the Army, and I was in a combat, I was detached with a combat, so I was about the only woman for the first few years as a water purification specialist. So I didn't get to go on the fun stuff with the guys at that time, because they would have had to make special arrangements for me to go at that point. So I was always rear detachment at the time.
How many women were there?
In my unit, it was water purification. We only had specialized maybe 10 to 15 people, soldiers, but there was only one woman at the time, and that was me.
Okay.
And after that, after maybe, I don't know, a year or so, then someone else came along with us. But we were detached with a larger field service, which was 259th Field Service, and they went along with the 82nd Airborne, and there were plenty of women in that, so we grouped with them. Mm-hmm. But in my particular field at that time, we didn't have, I was it in that unit.
What was it like when you signed up, and where were you first stationed and so on?
What was it like when I signed up? Well, I was a kid. I was 17 years old, and I just thought, well, I think I'm going to join the Army. I think this is a good thing maybe I want to do. And I went over, signed the paperwork. A year ahead, I was a junior in high school, so I graduated in my junior year of high school so that I could go ahead and be gone by that September. When most people were doing homecoming, I was doing push-ups and kissing the dirt underneath concertina wire with a rifle on my back. It's hard to believe, but I did do that. And
where was it?
Fort Bragg, North Carolina is where my station was, but I did my training at Fort Dix, New Jersey for my basic training. And then after that, I went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, mm-hmm. and that I learned to do water purification. We went out into fields. They have what's called a cattle car, and it's just a giant semi, basically driven, and you can't really see out. There's no windows. There might be a few, but we would go out there in the freezing cold and go by the little lakeside and purify water and be tested every day, and I did that. Then in February, I was stationed over to Fort Bragg. That was February the following year after training. In Fort Bragg, North Carolina, 82nd Airborne. I was not airborne, however. Our detachments, how they work that, are your rear detachments, and they go along with the airborne units to help provide drinking water, laundry facility, whatever you would see in a city. The rear detachments, then they would put together little cities for you, the communications, mm-hmm. so that you can, that's how it was done then. Obviously that was 35 years ago, but they're way better equipped these days to do that.
Was it what you imagined you'd be doing?
It was, actually. I ranked high. They take an ASVAB, and that is a military training test to see how well you would do in certain fields. Mm-hmm. And mine was very sporadic. I did well for firefighting, which I would never do, or psychology or water purification, and then some of a few admin fields. So it was kind of done, number 1 through say 4, that after they train you, they'll say this is what you would qualify for, where your best skill set would be. So I picked water purification. It sounded interesting, and it was interesting, but there was a lot of math equated with water purification, and that it's not a strong suit for me. So I still did well, but I had to keep fighting to get that going and concentrate every night.
And did you do that throughout your career?
No, when I got to Fort Bragg as a 17-year-old, I arrived there, I think February 3rd of 1984, and I was still 17. So I was just a little kid, basically. And I remember pulling up after going through to get my new dog tags and whatever else I was getting at the time, my assignments for duffel bags, and you get issued new uniforms and badges, and they drive you in. I drove in on a bus, dropped my stuff down, and the guys were leaving for Grenada. They had bombed at that time in 83 to 84. That was a hot spot. Mm-hmm. And we had, I think, 15 men in the unit, and I was the only woman. And they were leaving at that point, within the next few hours. And the first sergeant looked at me and he said, "Can you type?" I said, "Well, I was a kid. Sure, I can type." I had no idea what that would mean. I'm just saying, "Okay, yeah, I can type. What's that about?" Well, I never left post at that point. He was with the company commander, and they said, "This gal, she's going to take care of our admin." So I filled that slot because there were no admins in that area that could do the things that I was capable of doing quickly. So I ran the orderly room, and from that point forward, I just excelled with that, and I never did the water purification. I did a few assignments on water purification with the unit that we had to do, 30-day assignments in Virginia Beach or out at Fort Irwin, because you have to maintain your MOS, your military occupation specialty. You have to maintain, just like an attorney has to go and take CLEs, mm-hmm. continuing learning. The military does the same thing, but it's not for a 2-hour class as an attorney would do. It's for a 30-day stint. And I did that, but I still maintained the orderly room. I passed inspections for them, for the inspector generals, and that's what I did. I ran the field service company with the first sergeant and the commander.
Just backing up a little bit, at the time that you joined, what was your thinking? Like, it's a way to...
When I joined? Uh-huh. I really didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't want to involve a lot of times in a college class that I was just not interested in. And it's not that I didn't qualify. Many people do. However, I think there is too high of an expectation of everyone to go to college, a 4-year learning, when you can learn the same 4 years in 3 months with the military, and that's not overstating. You learn more hands-on being with the military than you're going to learn in 4 years of book work. And I feel very strongly about that, military and trades. And you learn trades in the military. Mm-hmm. And I just said, this is what I'm going to do. And I did it. You can still go to college in the evenings if you want. They pay for it. Actually, the military wants you to go to school and get higher education. And many do. My husband has a higher education. But I just was not going to spend my time doing that. And I did night school afterward, and or during, and then after, and I would take classes here and there, and I ended up with a degree, an associate's degree. I had far more college credits than associate's degree, but they were all over the place because I just didn't focus on one thing. I was interested in a lot. So the military did that for me, and I won't ever regret that. That's the best thing I ever did, was join the military.
And after starting out at Fort Bragg, mm-hmm. then what was your path after that?
Mine was just Fort Bragg, and with all our little, we were deployed all the time. I did 30 days, 60 days out in Fort Story. I never left the country. I wasn't in a wartime, except for the little Grenada thing in 1984 that I did not go to, but I was part of indirectly. And I went to Fort Irwin, California, which is a national training center, and that was maybe 6 weeks, if I remember right. And then back to Fort Bragg, and then other little places, Fort McCoy, and that was when I went into this reserves and National Guard. We did Fort McCoy and just areas in the Midwest. Mm-hmm. Then back to Indianapolis and Fort Benjamin Harrison, and that was my stint. I didn't do anything other than that.
It sounds very interesting.
It was.
And did you meet your husband in the service?
I actually indirectly, when I was in the reserves, I met him in my hometown of Indianapolis near Naval Avionics. He was a naval person. And I met him out and about one night. He was training, or he was working on a plane. That's all I can really say. And he was doing that at the time when I met him, and the rest is history. When he got out of the Navy, he moved to Indianapolis and we got married. And then he joined the reserves at my assistant. I pushed him to go into the Army Reserve, just try it. Maybe go to Warrant Officer School. And then he was called up for the first Desert Storm and was gone. And then the rest is history, because he's still working with the military 30 years later.
Well, can you tell me a little more about being the woman? Did they assume you would want to do the usual women's roles?
I've done all of the roles, and
well, tell me about
I mean, I'm talking about being in the military. You have a military spouse or a person that's in the military, a woman. So I've been a service member and the spouse of the service member, so I can identify with everybody and what they go through, and how you just really need to be there for your service member as well. I know what they're doing. I know exactly what they're doing in the military because I was there, and I know why they do what they do. And the current situation with the pullout in Afghanistan is really bothering me, as along with other service members. I wasn't in Afghanistan. However, my husband was he was gone there for a very long time, not to Afghanistan, but in Iraq. Mm-hmm. And he still works indirectly regarding these situations. And it's very hard on service folks right about now, in this particular time. It's a betrayal. It's just not a good time in American history right now with what's happening and what happened. We all agree to pull out of Afghanistan. We shouldn't probably have been there this long. But what's been happening the past 20 years that it made this so crucial to have a photo op for a 9/11 anniversary.
Yes.
That's a problem. And it makes me wonder who is pulling the Iron Curtain.
So you're thinking of timing.
Yes. Yes, we didn't have to pull out. We did not have to pull out like that. And you need to leave your generals in charge. The generals who actually know what they're doing, and not your political generals. You need to have folks who leave the people who are in charge. From captain down, your lieutenants, people who've been there, they know what to do. I trust them with that decision. I don't trust people who've never been there to run those decisions. I'm not part of the machine. I trust those folks to do it, just like you would trust, well, hopefully you could trust a politician, but that just doesn't seem the case anymore in where we're heading as a country.
Since your husband is in it too, do you recommend
the service? Absolutely.
For everybody, or for people who are wondering or deciding?
I absolutely do. It's a melting pot of people that you work together to get things through. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, Hispanic. It's not about that. It's you work together to get everything done. And it works as a machine.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to look at someone and say, oh, you're Asian, I'm not going to help you. I just see who you are, and we're going to get through whatever conflict we're going through together, and we're going to make it through. And unfortunately, the administration, the current administration, it seems like we're trying to get this into a social experiment. You know, now today, we've got women now, oh, well, we can wear long ponytails. There's a uniform, and there's a reason there's a uniform. That's been thought out for over 200 years now. Why is there a uniform? Why do you not have hair down your back? Well, you don't have hair down your back because somebody can grab it. It can get caught into a propeller when you're out putting fuel into a tank from a helicopter or a C-130 or whatever the current planes are today. And now we're seeing folks coming forward with diversity. Well, we're already diverse. The military was the most diverse place on the planet. We all come from different backgrounds. I could have a Harvard grad next to me who's running the show, or I could have someone who is the register clerk at Clark gas station. We all see each other the same. We all wear the same uniforms. It doesn't matter what you did in the civilian life. We come together as a group and a team, and we make things happen. It's not supposed to be a social experiment, and I don't know where the breakdown is coming with that, but it's not good for your military to be a social experiment. That's for the good of the country.
I guess I would just like to know a little more about how did you leave the military and what you've done since.
Well, when I left, my husband and I was at that point just a reservist, active reserve, which means you're still gone quite a bit, and they started pulling reserves after the first Gulf War. They started pulling reserves more and more and more. That was before 9/11. About 1990, 1991, I think. It was 91. They started pulling them more. And I had already started a fresh career beside the reserve, and I was working as a bailiff in a courtroom. Mm-hmm. I started out doing some different things with courtrooms, and I made myself up to a Superior Court bailiff in Indianapolis. And that was a really good job, and I got to learn a lot of legalese, and because it was Superior Court, so I learned a lot. And I did that for several years, and then I was a courtroom, I ran the courtroom. I was a court manager, and I had my own court. And I put together a court and cleaned up a court that was off. At that time, they started doing satellite courts, and they were different areas in the city. And I went to manage a satellite court. And then from there, that's 12 years fast forward. At that point, then I became a paralegal at a major medical hospital that encompassed statewide hospitals. And there were 2 paralegals, and I was fortunate enough to get to do that job, and I did that for several years. And my husband got called to Iraq after 9/11 because of his specialty, and he was gone for quite a while. And at that point I decided, I could probably go ahead and retire now. I'm old enough. Not really, but old enough to not have to do the full-time work anymore. So I came down here. We had bought a cottage or a condo at the beach at Gulf Shores right before he got called away to, after 9/11. We were waiting for the shoe to drop on that, because at that point, like I said earlier, they started pulling troops, reservists, and guard. They used them like they never had used them in history, because our military didn't have as many folks that we needed to do those missions. And they called him, and he was gone. So we went forward with that, and I took care of the house and worked the full-time job and did everything I needed to do. Had the condo down at Gulf Shores, and then I said, okay, I think it's time to maybe go do something different. Let's come up here. And he had special assignment and was gone. and we've just been doing the same thing. And I've been working here, and I work around just little jobs, and I'm finished. I'm just ready, waiting for him to retire.
Are you able to connect what the rest of your career has been back to where you started in the military, of what you learned?
Of what I learned? A little bit, because I did the entire orderly room, which consists of, you might have 250 soldiers, and you have to do their legal paperwork, just signatures on things, but before they would leave and get them to the brigade, and on a smaller scale than what I would do as what I did, which was legal. That's where I kind of ended up, was in a legal field for 15, 20 years. And paperwork and running down stuff and investigating. That's what I did in the military a little bit. Not so much investigations, but it was kind of the same thing. You put a puzzle together. Why didn't Bobby Joe show up for formation? Well, let's deduce some facts here. And that's on the same level, really, as putting a case together. It's not exactly the same identifiers, but it is kind of the same thing. It's a common sense. I learned a lot. I had common sense anyway. However, that perpetuated the common sense, and it led into the legal field. And it also teaches you how to work well with others. Going back to the diversity, you all work well together, and as a team, how are you going to put things together? And if you don't do your part of the puzzle, the rest is not going to come together. So that is a major factor of the military. If I don't purify the water, it can't go in the cup for Sally to drink her pills. So what are you going to do? Go out to the pond out here and get some water? I don't know. That's on a small scale. Again, I'm just trying to put things together how they happen. And
what would you say is the very best part of your military service?
Oh, the very best part of that for me was to say that I served my country honorably. That was the best part for me. I traveled and I met friends, long-lasting friends, some friends I'll never see ever again, some that went their way, and because it has been so long ago. But the camaraderie was probably, that tops it off. The camaraderie, getting together and doing things. Even after you've worked together all week, everyone would meet up at a pond. I go back to the pond reference. However, we would all meet at a place that's called the Duck Pond, and we'd have cookouts on Sundays. The same group that you'd think you'd be sick of seeing, but we may be heading out, I don't know, to a special mission tomorrow, and you want to keep that family together, and it is family. It's a tight family. That was my favorite part.
When you went in, did you have family either had been in the military?
Yes.
And so tell me about that.
My grandfather served in World War II, and he was with Patton's Army, along with a million more. And he rode dispatch through Africa to take the notes to the generals. At that time, they would have had motorcycles, Harley Davidsons, and he would ride that across horrible situations, and he would never talk about what he would run into, and we still don't know, but I have an inkling through just different vets who would talk who were at the same time. He was in, and he unfortunately passed away when he was very young. He passed away at age 63 in 1984, and I thought I was 18 when he passed away that February. I thought what an old man he was, and he looked, because of what war did to him, and he was actually in World War II. So I had an appreciation, and I still do, what these guys go through and gals, but more so the guys when they're in these combat situations and on the ground. Your whole life changes. So his whole life was different. And he wasn't old when he passed. He was only 63. And my grandfather on my dad's side was in the Navy, but he never talked about too much of it, what he did in World War II. My father had he had a heart issue, so he wasn't in for Vietnam. However, my stepfather, he was in, and there was no relation of how they never met. They lived 5,000 miles from each other. So he was in. My brother was in, and he was in for 10 years. And I think I've had my one uncle in the Navy and an uncle in the Army. So it's basically on our side's been Army and Navy. I picked Army because I liked the camouflage.
I had no idea how popular it was.
I had no idea what it was going to be in 2021.
And you could get it in pink.
Until I washed my uniforms with, this was another thing I would do on the weekends. We would swap laundry duties or whatever, and I would take the laundry and do it for a few other folks. And I had left pink lipstick inside the camouflage BDUs, and I washed them all together and I dried them all together. Can you imagine what those look like? They were ready to strangle me. There was pink on everybody's uniforms, and you couldn't get it out because we didn't have all that fancy stuff you've got now. And oh yeah, I got in trouble for that one.
Well, how did it get resolved?
We had to just go get new uniforms over at the pawn shop. Everyone would go to a pawn shop. I didn't pay for theirs because I was not going to pay for them because I was doing their laundry. However, yeah, we got it out. I mean, I don't remember how, but I just remember everyone was so, what did you do to my uniforms?
And do you have people that you still stay in touch with?
I do not. I don't know whatever happened to any of them. They all go along their different ways. And now if I touched base with one, it would be like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
And I had a friend from Indianapolis, and we met at Fort Bragg. We were both from Indianapolis. So when you find somebody that is from your place, you connect really quickly. And we did stay in touch for a very long time, but then faded away. Mm-hmm. And I haven't seen her probably in 25 years. But if I had talked to her again, it'd go right back.
Right. It's a wonderful thing to have friends like that.
It is.
What did you refer to as your training when you
AIT? You have basic training, and that's where you learn rifles and just your code of conducts and just military jargon, how to do a claymore mine, which they don't use. That's totally non-essential anymore. Well, I think. You learn all of that stuff. You go through training, obstacle courses, which I did not do well. I'll just be honest. If you're sending this, if everybody's looking at it, I was not great at that. However, again, teamwork, because they wanted me to succeed. Uh-huh. So you have somebody right behind you helping you and saying, come on, let's go, get this. Get up there on that one more rope. Oh, okay, I'll do it. And I just keep going. I'll do better tomorrow. And you do better tomorrow. You run. You have to run, and you run, and you run, and you run. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in Fort Bragg. Well, every day really, but our unit was Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for PT, physical training. We would have to run 6 and 8 miles. Oh, but the beauty of it was you could look in front of you and all these good-looking guys were going, so I would keep going. Sorry, I had to throw that in there.
It's a great motivator.
That's right, gets going.
What do you think the hardest part of military life was for you?
Not seeing your family. That was the hardest part. You couldn't just drop what you were doing and go to mom's. Or call mom at that time, and we didn't have cell phones. You could not call home. And I remember my mother, I would call in basic training, and I can see the steel bunk right now, and there's a special way to put the laundry. We had green laundry bags, and we put them on. wrap them, and they had to be perfect or they would tear up your rooms. And I hated it. I just wanted to go home. And I would call my mom, and Mom, you could call on Sundays at like 3 to 4. So you could pick a time. And I would call, and she just really got me through it. She said, you can do this. You know you can do this. It's gonna be all right. You know, you're gonna make it.
You're a cheerleader.
And yes, she cheerleaded me so much. Part of it is because she's probably like, you're not coming back here, girl. You need to stay. No, she got me through, and she would send care packages, and I would get these great care packages full of whatever, fudge or, and everybody shared those care packages with each other. Of course, because you couldn't also have it in your room or you would get in trouble. So you'd hide it in your little dirty laundry stuff and put it in the bottom so the first sergeant wouldn't get it, but they would find it. But that was another worst part. In the mornings, oh my gosh, reveille. If it were earlier, and in the morning, 3:45, 4 usually is when we had to get up. They would come through and take these large, the old tin trash cans, the big tall ones, aluminum, whatever. They would roll them down the roll, making all this racket, clunk, 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 and we'd have to get up and clean the bathrooms with toothbrushes, which that's true, we did. We had to do that. Not fun. But when I look back at it, I'm laughing about it.
You didn't continue that.
That was only in basic training in AIT.
Anything. Well, some of the questions I think you've already spoken about is how life lessons you learned in the military and how experiences have affected your life.
Mm-hmm. 11 years ago, well, again, I was by myself because my husband was doing a military project away, far away, and I was putting up a ladder at our new home, or I was putting up a medicine chest, and I fell off this ladder by myself in the middle of the woods, and military instinct kicked in, not from falling off the ladder, but how to react during crises. And I thought when I fell off, it was just a small step stool, but my foot got caught into the rung. And as I was going down, immediately I said, I'm gonna hit that side, my head on this cabinet. So I jerked back, and that made the leg worse. Long story, I crawled through the house. At first I thought, well, maybe I had pulled something off my foot. Maybe I've seen these other vets do this. Maybe I can pop that back. You hear war stories. Mm-hmm. And at that time, my daily life was war stories because my husband is still doing this, and he does a lot of this stuff. I came back out of whatever coma thing I was in for a second. I said, let me pop it back in. And I thought, okay, no, I don't think I did that. I think something else happened. Nobody's there with me. So I crawled through the house on my arms, and I dragged my whole body around a different location. And as I was thinking, because it's an odd style house and how you would go out front, there are 2 rooms and then the front foyer. If you go this way, you're not going to be able to turn back and go the other way unless you drag all the way here to go back. My whole mind was clicking, and I went into a mode of military survival with the arms and pulling through the concertina wire on the ground. How is that EMT going to get into this house? Because if you stop, they're going to be stuck there to move that door. So I kept going, didn't go far, went back, and I grabbed up onto the door. So they're not going to be able to get this up. So I grabbed it, unlocked it, the pain that I was in, my foot was off of my leg. It was holding on by one tendon. I got that done. Kept trying to call through the cell phone. Cell kept going out. But I finally made it through to a 911. I credit the military training for that because it didn't, my doctor saved the leg and God. But if I hadn't had that military training to stop, think, and then react, I would never have made that through that situation. That was a highly tense situation. And I went into the hospital with it, and they put the leg back together. But military training did that.
That is a very valuable.
Military training did that, because you have to think everything that's coming up. Bullets obviously weren't flying because I was on the ground, but it was a life or death situation, or a leg loss. Mm-hmm. And that got me through. So that is experience that I wanted to add. That you were asking about the experiences and what you learn. You learn so much in the military that it takes you through your entire life. Military folks are quite exceptional. Yes, I think everybody should go into the service. Well, maybe not everybody, but I do believe that is, I recommend it for anybody who is undecided. And you can go in for 2 years, and 2 years is not a great length of time. You can kind of figure out a path. You may love it, you may not, but you can determine at that point if you do or not. It is a skill builder. It is soulful. You can help folks. I just enjoyed the military. That was a great experience for me.
Is there anything you've always wanted to share about your service that you never have?
I was in the middle of a hurricane on a barge, and we were in the middle of the Atlantic off Fort Story, Virginia, and a hurricane had come through, and we had all warnings, and we were on a barge. We couldn't move the barge, but it was out in the Atlantic, and it was pretty scary. But we got out. We got out in the middle of the hurricane. I had maybe time at that point. My husband had not. I have more sea time than he does. I was on the barge for 30 days. So that's kind of something that's funny. But he was in the Navy and then the Army. But at that time, I had more sea time than he did, and I was in the Army.
What do you wish more people knew about veterans?
I wish more people knew that they're smarter than you think. So many folks seem to think that it is so important to be overly educated in book sense. I'm talking about going for your master's and doctorate, which what are you going to do with this? You still have no common sense. No offense, folks. But you can't look at an artillery man and think that he's less than what you think he is, because he has got to know a lot to use the equipment that he's using. Mm-hmm. That is what I do believe. Veterans, they're a hardy bunch, and you can rely on them. Do not be deceived, even with the old veterans. They've gone through more in a 2-year or 4-year tour that you may have gone through in your lifetime. Mm-hmm. Don't discount them. And I appreciate veterans for all that they've done. World War II, we're losing those guys. We don't have so many left. But I like to hear those stories. Mm-hmm. The World War II stories get me. That was the total, you couldn't call home. They didn't call home for years.
No, I know.
And that was a frustration for me with this last one, because at the beginning, everybody had cell phones, and there's just too much information on the television with that. Let the military do their job. You don't need to call home and call the units every time somebody breaks a toe. Stop. You have to stop this. They'll be taken care of. That's what they're there for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
You're welcome. Thank you for interviewing.